All right. A couple of weeks ago, Amanda and I took the overnight train to Sydney. There's silence, so there's not so many people who have experienced the delight of that trip. We heard the same horror stories you did. It's okay. We took along some eye masks. The eye mask. I don't know if I could put it on with all the other stuff I've got on at the moment, but we had the eye mask. We had the neck pillow, and we had the earplugs. Oh yeah. Which is all very very important. And if you're anything like me, it was a fairly cold night. It was running about 45 minutes late by the time we got on, which is it was well and truly after 11 o'clock. It's Friday night. We're all exhausted. The cabin was mostly quiet, and all the lights are out, and it's like, okay, this is okay. If you're anything like me, it takes to about Albury to actually calm down enough to even consider sleeping. But as we stopped at Albury, something happened in the minds of two people who were sitting behind us, and they started. Now look, I consider myself a fairly tolerant person. I consider myself reasonably patient, but my Lord, anyway. So. On and off for the next couple of hours, these ladies began talking, and they did not stop whinging about something. I took a list just so I can share them with you this morning. First, there was the quality of the toilet on the train. Then there was the lack of hand soap. There was the quality of the hand towel in the toilet. Then they moved on to their husbands, and that was an expansive conversation. There was a conversation about a daughter named Shazza who was moving out of home for the third time. There was a conversation about how cold it had been in Melbourne, how cold it was on the train, and the cost of insuring their pets. There was a whinge about one of their mutual friends who I found it quite amusing to realise they couldn't remember her name. But she hadn't called them for a while, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, hang on, it was Marie. Why hasn't Marie?" So if somebody here is named Marie, you got two people who maybe not quite sure about you, who you probably need to call. I'm just saying. We arrived at platform 2 at some station somewhere in the middle of the night, and they had a discussion about who was the person who decided when the second platform was in to call it Platform 2. I'd never thought about that before, and there was a very brief comment about the churches that they liked before something else happened, and there was a conversation about letterboxes and goodness knows whatever else. And you do all you can not to listen, but. Here's the problem. My $4 earplugs seriously just do not have the staying power to survive that sort of onslaught. You'd be happy to know though that the comment about churches did get me thinking, and I started writing this sermon, which is actually was actually in the back of my head. About what sort of, I wonder what it is about the church that we like, And it's the same question that's on Peter's heart, actually in this series called The Search for Identity. In this passage this morning, Peter just simply mentions three, core traits or behaviours that I reckon should mark the Christian church. And I'd like to suggest that whinging is not one of them. Amen? Let's remember that anyway. But these are not easy things. These are not optional things when things happen for us and all the stuff lines up. These are the things that actually should mark the Christian life, right? And remember, this is in the context of chapter 4 begins with, since Jesus suffered physical pain, basically expect that you're going to suffer some as well. Okay? And there's also last week's verse about prayer, which I shared. The end of the world is coming soon. So if you couple those ideas together, what Peter is saying is that the Christian life is like, given the day that you live in, the shortness of that day, and even the world around us with a great resistance to faith in many respects, that a lifestyle of love and hospitality and service is the courageous life to which Jesus calls his church to live. Let me just get through these quickly, or as quickly as I can. First up, courageous love. What I want you to grab from this is that this is not love that we talk about all the time, and it's not just a feeling, an emotion, a vibe in the church, or even something we do when it suits us. This is something, many of the early translations use the word fervent love. Love fervently. And the word for fervent essentially is the same word we get strenuous from. And the picture here is an athlete running at peak performance, a racehorse running at 110% in the Melbourne Cup sort of style of thing. Okay, this is the picture of giving it your all. And what Peter has in mind here is not a laid back, I guess we better love somebody. It is a very intentional, powerful, hard hitting, I'm intentionally giving all I've got. That's the kind of love that he's talking about. I'll hold nothing back. I'm going for gold. That's the attitude. That is the standard of the Christian life, of the sacrificial life that is meant to mark the Christian church, like no other community in history. And it's the thing that in the first century and the second century, when in the face of persecution, it set the church apart and it upended every kingdom you can imagine in this world. It's the way they loved each other. Can I just share two things on this point? There is no shortage of people today who want to line up and have a crack at the church, is there? And I think we can be honest enough and say that we've got plenty that they can throw stones at. You got plenty, even with me as the pastor. You have plenty of stones you can throw at me, and that's okay. Okay. There are plenty of people who want to nitpick. There are others who want to identify the many flaws and faults, and all of that can in some respect suck the energy and the optimism out of the church. It can sort of like lead to this whole, well, why do we bother? Sort of mindset, you know. And Peter's invitation to the church when faced with all of this is, where are the people who will stand up and embrace a life of giving sacrificially, of love for the sake of others? You can always join the pile-on. You can't always be the people who let the pile-on be the thing that motivates you to do better, if you know what I mean. Okay? And rather than be a community that always has faults to find, let's be the people who seek to fill this church not just with the presence of God, but also the presence of that sort of sacrificial love for people. Second, can I just share maybe the most loving thing I saw this week? And the minute I say that it means I can't share everything, right? It just means I can't in any way mention, and I should mention, all of the people who just sacrificially loved so well the other night, you know, cooking barbecues and doing things with family play groups, and it was amazing. I'm not in any way minimising anything else that happened anywhere else. Everyone okay? I finished a slot in the prayer room this week, and it was fairly late at night. The person who came in for the next couple of hours brought a church directory with them. And I was like, that's a strange thing to bring to a prayer room, because you can't really make phone calls after midnight, you know. So, anyway, I asked them what the motivation was, and the motivation was two things. One of these days, I'm going to learn some more names. And the other motivation was God laid it on my heart to intercede, to seek him and to pray for every person in this book. I'd just like to tell you that if your name appears in the church directory, you were prayed for this week. All right? And that in many respects lit a bit of a fuse under the staff this week, and we decided to start at A and pray for everybody whose surname started at A, and we're going to crack on to, I don't know, we'll see how far we get, I guess. We'll see how motivated our staff is, hey? Come on, let's back it up, guys, let's go. Peter's second invitation to the church is courageous hospitality. Just remember, in Peter's world, hospitality was not the occasional inviting over of somebody who's like you. It was not the invitation of somebody who you've said, I guess they've sort of come to our place, so we probably should go to theirs, and all that sort of thing. It was the inviting of a stranger. It was the inviting of somebody you don't know, and maybe who disagrees with everything you do and doesn't have the same opinion on stuff that you do, as a means to connect and show love on a far deeper level. And can I just say that sort of stuff, I reckon, in our world today, which is becoming more and more tribalised and more sucked into by we're only connected by our causes, is becoming increasingly rare, isn't it? But yet that is the mark of the Christian church that sets people apart. I could go down any number of rabbit holes on this issue of hospitality, but let me just share a couple of sentences out of a book called The Gospel Comes with a House Key. Rosaria Butterfield, a great read if you're after a good book. People who live out radically ordinary hospitality see their homes as God's gift to use for the furtherance of his kingdom. They open doors rather than close them. They let God use their home, apartment, dorm, front yard, churchyard, gym, or garden for the purpose of making strangers into neighbours and neighbours into family. Your personality does not excuse you from this type of ministry. It might mean you do it differently, but radically ordinary hospitality is the basic building block of Christian living. Start anywhere. Just make sure you get started. The last one is courageous service. Verse 10 begins with, God has given each of you a gift from his great variety of spiritual gifts. Now, some of you missed that verse, and I probably just need to spell this out. Every person who follows Jesus is given by Jesus at least one supernatural spiritual gift and ability that is not intended for you to hang on and keep you warm. All right? It does not exist there just to make you feel good about yourself. It is there for the loving service and benefit of other people. There is a very good chance that the person next to you has a very, very different gift than you've got, right? And some gifts will be noticeable. They'll be public. Other things will be unnoticeable and not so public. And the only criteria given here is that all of them matter. In fact, all of them have to exist, or the church by definition can't be what it needs to be. Now, let me just share something here from the spot of identity. Some of us have grown up or hear this, and we sort of just have grown up with this inferiority complex on our lives. That what we'll do, that what we do is just never enough. That what we can offer is just not good enough. That maybe somebody told us that we didn't measure up and all that sort of thing. Or we just have a very underdeveloped sense of worth. And let me just tell you what I'd love to say to you on this Father's Day is something straight from the Father's heart. And it's not that you need to do something to earn his favour, because you've already got it. You don't have to do something to receive his love because you've already received it. But remember Peter's story, okay? So somebody who has made incredible mistakes, so somebody whose life could be defined by a less than ideal past. And what does Jesus want to do with them? He probably thinks in the back of his mind, I've got every reason and every disqualifying sense that I can to justify me not doing anything. But the problem with that is the Father's heart is to redeem that person, to awaken the gift that he put there in the first place, to motivate it and to build into them something that God can use. Okay? There is something uniquely God-given and intended for others in you. Do you see on the screen there what the problem might be?
It's in red?
It's in red. Yeah, that's it. That's exactly right. The problem area does not relate to God's giving. The problem area does not relate to the people we're serving. The problem, in many respects, sometimes ends up with us. All right? Now, here is why this is so important. The verse actually goes on to and ends with this. Everything you do will bring glory to God. Ouch. Because you know what Peter infers there, don't you? What he infers there, I think, is fairly clear, and not to sound blunt and not to sound unloving to anybody, but here's the thing: if you're not using what God has given you, then it clearly limits the glory that God is trying to receive from your life. And that's a problem. That's a problem significant for our church even, because without you, we can't be a church that exists for his glory. And the reason that's a problem is because one of the key culture statements that will be on that wall very soon is we want to be a church that actually exists for his glory. So if the church exists for his glory and we're not giving him glory from our lives, there's a problem, isn't there? Which is why Peter, I think is so blunt on this. And I think you should be in a position, lovingly I would say this to everybody, you should be in a position to be able to share with somebody what gift you have, who it blesses, how you use it, and probably to some extent how it has evolved over the years as you do it. So if you've never considered what that is before, if you've never thought about what that is, if you've never thought about what this might be, would you consider reaching out to somebody and having a conversation? And maybe there's some stuff I can help you with when it comes to that. But my plea would be, find your gift and use it. Okay? Remember that Jesus' heart for Peter is he wants to find somebody who assumes they'll just be a fisherman. Like Peter assumes that he'll just be a fisherman. That's all he will be. The problem with that is that Jesus is trying to use him to fish for people. He's trying to get him to expand his thinking, think bigger. So what is it that limits our capacity to grow into and become what God is calling us to be? Let me just toss in a point 4, which is very quick. Living this way takes courage. It takes resolve, because like so many other areas in the Christian life, you can settle for a really fake version of it. Let's just point a couple of them out, okay? The lesser version might be, loving or getting close to a few. It might be staying close with a couple of normal people who are kind of like us in terms of love and hospitality, but ignore the people who are heading to eternity without Christ. And I don't think that's the expansive, costly, sacrificial love that Jesus is calling us to. The other alternative would be we settle for a Christianity that is consumer-based, where all that's expected of us is I come, I relax, I enjoy, I watch, I observe, I learn about, I give to, and I watch other people serve, but I have no intention of doing it myself. And that, my friends, would be a tragedy. Okay? Remember the context that Peter's got in mind of those two verses at the start? We only have this short life. We only have this moment. And the tragedy would be with eternity coming and Jesus soon to return and his victorious kingdom coming. I think Peter's heart is, goodness me, find out what you're good at and use it well for his glory. I've shared before about watching State of Origin games years ago when I was in the police force. And most games happen on a Wednesday night. And that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. Wednesday night, those State of Origin players would leave it all out on the field and usually would walk off with bandages, and it was brutal. Many of the games involve this guy up here, whose name is Jonathan Thurston, who plays for Queensland and North Queensland. Yeah, I know. He's a good guy. Many players who played Wednesday night would then back up Friday night for their club. And I worked 2 games one week. I don't know what Amanda was doing and why I was working overtime, but I was. So I worked Wednesday night and watched State of Origin, and Thurston played 80 minutes, and he had a defining role in Queensland winning that series in Game 3. It's now 79 minutes through Friday night. He's played 79 minutes for North Queensland. North Queensland are about 20 points in front and are threatening to go in again. All right? Thurston and his guys are in no... They should just be putting their feet up for the last minute and just going, you know what, the game's over. It's all good. We've done enough. All right? And there's a moment where most of the crowd have started to leave. There's a bit of just nobody around in the 79th minute. By this point, the game's well and truly over and decided. There's a pass intercepted as North Queensland are trying to go in, and the other guy grabs the ball and runs the length of the field to go and score. And I remember standing on ground level watching this happen. And Thurston starts about here, near the goalposts. The ball's intercepted about here, and the guy runs the length of the field. Thurston's got to probably take that line and run further to get him. But 79 minutes in, probably with nothing in the tank, probably exhausted, and he must think in the back of his head, surely somebody else can run. Surely somebody else can do it. Surely I'm okay just winning by 14 rather than 20. Because in the grand scheme of things, who cares? It would just be easy to take a breather, somebody else catch him. And I just remember watching Thurston turn, run the length of the field, summon strength from somewhere after he's busted his gut all week, run the length of the field and tackle the guy right on the try line. And just going, what an act of sacrifice. Unbelievable. And the funny thing was, he wasn't the captain at this time, but you could see the way his team rallied. They saw this guy and they said, if this guy of any person at this moment in history can run the length of the field and catch that guy who's probably the fastest guy on the other team and deny him, I can get my butt back up there and help as well. So North Queensland, basically, you could see them. They all ran back as a team. They all buckled in and just gave it their all. The ball got turned over and North Queensland scored again. And I just remember watching this moment, going, what a moment! It's just a picture of a guy who's got nothing to play for, giving it his all. And that, my friends, is the call of the church in this moment of history. Because even though Jesus is going to win, and even though we could win by 14, and even though we could it'd just be easier to slow down. It'd just be easier to retire. It'd just be easier to do less. I think Peter's word to us this morning would be this: summon your strength. Drink from a deeper well. Get ready to run the field and chase down that one who would otherwise get past you. I think if we're honest with ourselves, most of us would be saying, we've been given from an empty tank and we've got nothing else to give. Maybe some of us have just been distracted pursuing idols or things that really don't matter in the space of eternity. Maybe we've just tried before and this whole loving thing, and it's too hard, and I'm disillusioned and discouraged, and I don't really want to do my part. And I think Peter would call us today to embrace the courageous life, to stand up and go again. My last word I've just reserved for fathers. This is not a Father's Day sermon, I get that. But for the fathers here who serve so well and love so well, can I just encourage and call you to be the men of God who let his love so transform and fill your life that you continue to give and serve your wives, your families, your churches, your communities with such courage. I've said enough.